when you really take a look at your work and the research that you've done, the ministry that you pursue, the psychological counseling that you give to people, and I think about your New York Times bestseller, Homecoming: Overcome Fear and Trauma to Reclaim Your Whole Authentic Self. You have this very unique gift to give all of us, where as we're going through something that is collectively traumatic, whether you are experiencing it in your community or you're watching it unfold in the media, there is still a way to stay connected to your authentic self. How do you do that when something is playing out in real time?
hmm It is so important for us to learn to honor and be in touch with our own feelings.
Mm.
And a part of the way we do that is bodily awareness, because our bodies are telling the story, our bodies are giving us information, and sometimes we're ignoring that. So when I want to know how I feel, then how's my heart feeling? How is my rest? How's my appetite? Have I lost my appetite, or have I noticed I'm doing a lot of emotional eating? Am I more irritable and I am, quickly responding to people in this kind of aggressive way, or have I shut down and I have no words? So paying attention to the ways in which you're showing up to life, to the day, can help me to have an understanding of myself, and then to connect the dots between how am I feeling and what's causing that. Journaling is wonderful. And I will say some people use social media as their journal. They're processing it as they're writing it. That's each person's decision. We can also use our artistry. Those who are open to therapy, whether you're already in or willing to seek it out, being able to make the connections between the larger story and my individual story,
Mm.
because it lines up, it intersects. What is happening there is also to a certain level happening within me. And it is a way of, when I say homecoming, is to tell myself the truth and then live based on that truth. So I will not lie to myself and say, with all of this going on, oh, everything's fine, and how are you? Or I'm blessed, and how are you? No, how am I really doing? And in the truth, that begins my liberation and my healing.
What do you do when you're in a moment in your life where the world around you feels like it's falling apart or is terrifying or overwhelming?
There is so much that is going on globally and nationally and locally and in people's own living rooms. And it's really aligns that this week is International Mental Health Day, Global Mental Health Day. And so as we look at everything that's happening, a big piece is to release our self judgment. Often we think I'm the only one that's overwhelmed, or
Mm.
I'm the only one stressed out, or I'm the only one who either can't stop crying or cannot access my tears. And so the first message is just that everyone is feeling it. We just show it in different ways. And so we need to create for ourselves a soft place to land. And the way I become a soft place to land is releasing my judgment about how I should feel or how I should act, because based in our own life experience, it shows up differently.
How does it show up for you when you feel like the world around you is spinning out of control?
Yes. So for me personally, it's challenges with sleep,
Mm.
because there is so much to think about, so much to consider, so much to feel. And then those of us who are parents, sometimes during the day, you're on and focused about their care. And once they're in bed, then you can start to process on a deeper level what you have seen throughout the day. So that is one of the ways. And then another way for me is looking for community and creating connection.
Mm.
And we know that social support is what we call it, is so key, because during these times, people can feel so isolated and so alone. and that we also do need our rest. And so one of the things we talk about is mindfulness, or Dr. Shelley Harrell has developed soulfulness. It is this idea of really being present, so that when we are questioning meaning or purpose, instead of going to that place of thinking nothing matters, instead to say, I want to make this moment count. I want to be present. I want to show up for life, because life is fragile in the sense of you don't know how much time you have for the most part. And we see that happening across the globe. And so being present with self compassion is an incredible and necessary way for us to release some of the overwhelm.
I love that you said that, because one of the things that I worry about is that when the news in particular is extremely dark and overwhelming, it's easy for people to become nihilistic and pessimistic or overly anxious. And I love that your counsel is to really create a soft landing for yourself, because you can't lose hope and you can't lose sight of the fact that there is still life to live, and there is love, and there is goodness in the world, and there are better days ahead. And I don't say that to gloss over some of the very serious issues in the news right now, but I love that you're talking about this, because I think about it from the standpoint of, if you get too paralyzed by the trauma, or you get overwhelmed by things that you really can't control, it's going to impact your ability to make decisions, your ability to protect yourself and your family, your ability to take care of yourself through this period that we're in right now. And so, do you have recommendations for how people can stay connected? Because I also worry that people tend to, look at the news nonstop, and it's one way that you think that you're connected, and yet it can really pull you into a hole.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it is integral, an integral part of our healing is finding the balance for yourself of I want to be informed but not overexposed,
How do you know the
right?
difference?
Yes, yeah. Well, you feel it in your body where if I don't know anything that is happening in the world, then I have checked out. And so then I'm not informed. I'm not taking my part in this human family. And so it is important to get a sense of what is happening. The overexposure, if I am on a 24-hour news cycle, and especially when that news cycle is visual, because the nonstop I am taking in the imagery and the sounds of violence and death. And so needing to give ourselves permission to not watch it all day, that the number of hours or minutes I consume it is not the measure of my care,
Mm,
right? And so I want to get a sense of what is happening, especially as we're talking about these global issues, because there's long history there. And I love the humility that I've seen from several people online asking the questions or saying they're confused or they don't understand. And I think even those who feel like they know it all well, often we know our journey well. What has other people's journey been? And so just to say to yourself, I want to know what is happening in the world because I care. And I don't want to make that the only thing I consume.
mm.
And we are such layered, complex beings. And so to have the fullness of each other's stories, then we have to see each other beyond the trauma headlines.
I love that. Is there a difference between the process of coming home to oneself when you are actively in the middle of something that is out of your control versus the process of a homecoming that is due to past trauma or feeling disconnected from your life?
Yes. There is a homecoming that happens when we are post-trauma, and the term PTSD was developed with veterans. So it would be the idea that I experienced child abuse, but now I'm an adult. I was in an abusive relationship and then I escaped. And so then I'm coming home to myself and that piece is over. But there's another type of homecoming when we're talking about continuous traumatic stress. If we live in a community where there are always things happening, or we live in a region in the world where there is perpetual conflict, then it is, how do I stay near to me while the world is spinning around me? And that is important as well, because some of us do not get the luxury of everything being post. So to say to myself, I have to wait for all of this to be over to reconnect with me would be a lifetime and perhaps generations before that can happen. So instead, to say, while I am aware that there is hostility, while I am aware that there is harm, even for some, while I'm aware that there is war, that in the midst of that, I see my own humanity and I see that my care is necessary and I cannot wait for all of this to be over before I nourish myself. I find ways to nourish myself and my community, those I love, even as we're living through it.
Do you have one or two recommendations of ways somebody could nourish themselves when they are in the middle of it?
Yes. So when the trauma is ongoing, one of the ways that is accessible, and I think about that especially when we're considering globally that, what are the resources that are present? One of the ways that bring us home to ourselves is our spiritual practices. And whether for people that is meditation, whether that is prayer, whether that is gathering with people of a similar faith, whether that is reading a sacred text. And for some people, that may be about connecting with nature. And if I can't access the nature physically, even the visualization to see myself in those spaces at the beach or sitting under my favorite tree, or that reminder of us being connected to that which is greater than we are. And so spiritual practices in the midst of conflict, war, violence have been a refuge for many people and also a source of hope that things can get better. And then I would also say in psychology, we have what we call narrative therapy, which is the telling of our stories. And so even in the midst of war, of conflict, of community violence, when we can come together with each other and tell our truths and recognize that we aren't judged or rejected for talking about what we have been through and how it has affected us, we heal in relationship with each other. And so seek out people with whom you can tell your truth and they will honor you for it.
Hey, it's your friend Mel, and welcome to a special and important episode of the Mel Robbins podcast. I am so glad that you are here with me. I just wish that you were here, like physically with me, because I kind of want to hold your hand. I could use a hug right now.